for the finale of Fantasmagoriana. I'll make sure everything's working as usual. Usually just the Conte Fantastique. I think it's just at a very quiet part. Yeah, it should be going. It is going. Excellent. All right, here we go. Well, first, before I forget, so yes, Phantasmagoriana, Tales of the Dead. Oh no. There it is. Da-da-da. Awesome. Ugh. Yes, we are. We're finishing up Phantasmagoriana today. There are two more, 5 and 6. Uh, and I'm sorry right away. It's been a long day. It's been a long couple of. It's been a long. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm even more tired than I thought I was. Um, I even had a moment right as I pressed start streaming. I was like, it is Thursday today, right? So I knew it was, but it was. It was just. It was. It was a day. Yeah, I'll maybe get into that. Otherwise, it was a flying sort of a thing, so I can wait until I don't know next week. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But for now, we're gonna get started. So again, yes, Phantasmagoriana finale, Tales of the Dead. First one, oh, mwah, the storm. Of shapes that walk at dead of night and clank their chains and wave the torch of hell around the murderer's bed. Pleasures of imagination. Oh, it's starting out good. All right, hang on. No, come back. There. New. On the evening of the 12th of June 17, a joyous party was assembled at Monsieur de Montbrun's chateau to celebrate the marriage of his nephew, who had, sorry, that's not, oh, there we go, who had, in the morn of that day, led to the altar the long-sought object of his fond attachment. The mansion, which was on this occasion the scene of merriment, was situated in the province of Gascony, at no very great distance from the town of blank. I've noticed that in these classic books that they like put those blanks in there, and it's an interesting. I haven't actually looked at why that is. It was a venerable building erected during the War of the League, and consequently discovered in its exterior some traces of that species of architecture which endeavored to unite strength and massiveness with domestic comfort. Situated in a romantic but thinly peopled district, the family of Monsieur de Montbrun was compelled principally to rely on itself for amusement and society. This family consisted of the Chevalier, an old soldier of blunt but hospitable manners, his nephew the bridegroom, whom, having no male children, he had adopted as his son, and Mademoiselle Emily, his only daughter. The latter was amiable, frank, and generous, warm in her attachments, but rather romantic in forming them. Employed in rural sports and occupations, and particularly attached to botany, for which the country around afforded an inexhaustible field, the Chevalier and his inmates had not much cultivated the intimacy of the few families which disgust to the world or other motives had planted in this retired spot. Hang on. Oh, okay. Disgust being a noun. Okay, hang on. Employed in rural sports and occupations, and particularly attached to botany, for which the country around afforded an inexhaustible field, the Chevalier and his inmates had not much cultivated the intimacy of the few families which disgust to the world or other motives had planted in this retired spot. Occasional visits exchanged with the nearest of their neighbors sometimes enlivened their small circle, which the greater part of those who lived at a distance, they were with the greater part of those who lived at a distance, they were scarcely acquainted even by name. Again, apologize, a little bit tired. Things are coming a little bit slowly at the moment. The approaching nuptials, however, of Theodore, which was the name of Monsieur de Montbrun's adopted son, excited considerable conversation in the adjacent district, and the wedding of her cousin, it was determined by Emily, should not pass off unaccompanied by every festivity which the nature of their situation and the joyfulness of the event would allow. On this occasion, therefore, inquiries were made as to all the neighboring gentry within a considerable distance around, and there were none of the least note neglected in the invitations, which were scattered in all directions. Many persons were consequently present, with those with whose persons and character the host and his family were unacquainted. It's always a good plan. Some also accepted the summons, who were strangers to them even in name. Oh gosh. Emily was attentive and courteous to all, but to one lady in particular she attached herself during the entertainment with most sedulous regard. Madame de Nunez, the immediate object of Emily's care, had lately settled in the neighborhood, and had hitherto studied to shun society. It was supposed that she was the widow of a Spanish officer of the Walloon Guards, to whom she had been fondly attached. Indeed, so much so that, notwithstanding he had been dead several years, the lady never appeared but in the garb of mourning. She had only lately settled in Gascony, but her motives for retiring from Spain and fixing on the French side of the Pyrenees were not known, and but slightly conjectured. Isabella de Nunez was about 28 years of age, tall and well-formed. Her countenance was striking, nay, even handsome, but a nice physiognomist would have traced in her features evidence of the stronger passions of human nature. He would have seen pride softened by distress, and would have fancied, at times, that the effects of some concealed crime were still evident in her knit brow and retiring eye, when she became the object of marked scrutiny. She had never before entered the Chateau de Montbrun, and her person had hitherto been unnoticed by Emily, but who, having now seen her, devoted herself with ardor to her new friend. The lady received the attentions of her amiable hostess with grateful but dignified reserve. The morning had been extremely sultry, and an oppressive sensation in the air, which disordered respiration, threw, as the day closed, an air of gloom over the company, ill-suited to the occasion of their meeting. Madame de Nunez appeared more than anyone else to feel the effects of the lurid atmosphere. The occasional sparks of gaiety which she had discovered gradually disappeared, and before the day had entirely shut in, she seemed at times perfectly abstracted, at other times to start with causeless apprehension. In order to divert or dispel this increasing uneasiness, which threatened to destroy all the pleasure of the festival, dancing was proposed, and the enlivening sounds of the music in a short time dissipated the temporary gloom. The dancing had not, however... Sorry, hang on, I did mess that up. In order to divert or dispel this increasing uneasiness, which threatened to destroy all the pleasure of the festival, dancing was proposed, and the enlivening sounds of the music in a short time dissipated the temporary gloom. The dancing had not, however, long continued, ere the expected storm burst in all its fury on the chateau. The thunder, with its continued roar, reverberated by the adjoining mountains, caused the utmost alarm in the bosom of the fair visitors. The torrents of rain which fell might almost be said to swell the waters of the neighboring Garonne, whilst sheets of lightning, reflected on its broad waves, gave a deeper horror to the pitchy darkness which succeeded. The continuance of the storm gradually wound up the apprehensions of the greater part of the females to horror, and they took refuge in the arched vaults and long subterranean passages which branched beneath the chateau from the vivid glare of the lightning. Although unable to shut their ears although unable to shut their ears to the reiterated claps of thunder which threatened to shake the building to its foundations. In this general scene of horror, Isabella alone appeared unappalled. The alternate abstraction and alarm, which before seemed to harass her mind, had now vanished, and had given place to a character of resignation, which might almost be considered as bordering on apathy. While the younger females yielded without resistance to the increasing horrors of the tempest, and by frequent shrieks and exclamations of dread bore testimony to the terror excited in their bosoms by the aggravated circumstances of the scene, she suffered no symptom of apprehension to be visible in her now unvarying features. Agitation had yielded to quiet. She sat ostensibly placid, but her apparent inattention was evidently not the effect of tranquillity, but the result of persevering exertion. The hour was approaching towards midnight, and the storm, instead of blowing over, having increased in violence, the hospitable owner of the mansion proposed to his guests that they should abandon the idea of returning home through the torrents of rain, which had already deluged the country and rendered the roads in the vicinity impassable, but should accommodate themselves, with as little difficulty as possible, to the only plan now to be devised, of making themselves easy during the remainder of this dismal night. Yo, yo, how's it going? How's it going? It's called The Storm, so it's right up your alley. There's a wedding, and the storm has, they're in subterranean passages and vaults because it's so scary. But yeah, I'm just like, it sounds like a good time. And isn't rain supposed to be good for weddings? Although I guess maybe like storm versus just like a nice gentle rain is a little bit different. Although his mansion was not extensive, yet he proposed with the aid of temporary couches, and putting the ladies to the inconvenience of sleeping 2 in each room, to render the party as comfortable as his means would allow, and which would, at all events, be more agreeable than braving abroad the horrors of the tempest. The irony is you just shot a wedding a couple months ago, and a storm missed it by about 5 minutes. On which end? Like beforehand? Like it stormed beforehand or after? But it was kind of fun hanging $3,000 worth of camera gear around your neck. I bet. How'd that go? Was it good? Were there any, like, were you able to get any good shots with, like, it in the background, the storm in the background? Just missed it after. Well, I guess that's probably good. Oh, so it was an outdoor one? Interesting. Was it an indoor reception? Ooh. Could be fun. Reasonable as such a plan was in itself, it was still more strongly recommended by the circumstance that the carriages which were expected to convey the parties to their respective abodes had not arrived, and from the state of the roads and the continuance of the still pitiless storm, it seemed visionary to expect them. The after-party was indoor. Good. Slam back a bunch of Italian food. Oh, it sounds amazing. Have you been to a lot of weddings? Do they do like the similar stuff? Because I think the weddings that I've always been to have been usually just like the chicken, the other thing, and the other thing. There was one pizza wedding. Other than that, I don't know. I just like the dancing. Nope, that was the only wedding you've ever been to. Okay, all right. Would you consider doing more weddings? Why wouldn't you? It could be a good gig, good side gig. The party therefore yielded without regret to the offered arrangement, save with one dissenting voice. The fair Spaniard alone positively declined the offered accommodation. Why is it always the Spaniards in these? Argument in vain was used for a considerable space of time to detain her. Oh, so this is Isabella, I think. Argument in vain was used for a considerable space of time to detain her. She positively insisted on returning home, and would alone in the dark have faced the storm, had not an obstacle which appeared invincible militated against her resolve. Weddings are awful because egotistical people. Oh no, only reason you did it is because it was for your brother. Well, congrats to your brother and congrats to you on getting a sister-in-law. Okay. Sad. I guess I've only, like, gone to them. I haven't actually had to deal with that side of it. So, I guess fair. But I guess if you're actually, like, working the thing, you do have to deal with that. Yeah, I guess never mind. But again, $3,000 with a camera around your neck. Could be something. Just find good people, maybe. I don't know. Had not an obstacle which appeared invincible militated against her resolve. This was too imperious to be resisted. Her carriage and servants were not arrived. And from the representation of Monsieur de Montbrun's domestics, some of whom had been detached to examine the condition of the neighboring roads, it was perfectly clear that with that part of the district in which she resided, no communication could for several hours take place. Madame de Nunez, therefore, at length yielded to necessity, although the pertinacity of her resistance had already excited much surprise and called forth innumerable conjectures. Yeah, $3,000 of camera gear with a crowd full of journalists and former computer scientists. Really good for your portfolio. I mean, kept just the pictures. I don't know. I don't know how these things work. I'm just optimistic. Optomistic. I was trying to make a lens joke. Sorry. Anyway, by the way, I'm very tired. It was a long day, so I apologize for getting tongue-tied and being strange. So yeah. Well, I don't know. If you think about it, it could be fun. I think it'd be fun to like. Oh, I was gonna say, take pictures of animals and stuff. But like that could also be an issue. Could be, yeah, difficult to do, but at least they're fun. Don't worry, you're tired too. Spent all day working on your video. Okay, sounds good. The one you were supposed to have done for yesterday, right? Because today is Thursday. And are you getting it done tonight? For tonight? And it is the combat one, right? How nobody understands combat, because the supersonic one, you're still doing for next week. And tomorrow you goof off. Excellent. That sounds good. It's Friday. I won't go into the what is it? The words are so hard. The reference. But yes to everything I just said. Excellent. Sounds good. Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'm glad I'm somewhat following things. Fun. So that'll be good. So you're almost done. It's uploading right now, so it'll make the Friday midnight release schedule. Midnight. Was might night a typo, or is it? It should be a thing. It seems like it should be a thing. Release schedule. Excellent. Yeah, I found that the uploading YouTube videos takes a long freaking time. It's kind of annoying. So yeah. Anyway, midnight. Okay, it should be a might night. I can't figure out what it should be at the moment, but yeah. All right, I'm sorry. Getting too chatty. All right, my bad. The arrangements between the respective parties were soon made, and the greater part of the ladies gladly retired to seek repose from the harassing events of the day. Emily, who had not relaxed in her marked attention to her interesting friend, warmly pressed her to share her own room, in which a sofa had been prepared as a couch, and to which she herself insisted on retiring, while Madame de Nunez should take possession of the bed. The latter, however, again strenuously objected to this plan, asserting that she should prefer remaining all night in one of the sitting rooms with no other companion than a book. Sounds nice, actually. The part you dislike the most is narration. Since your throat is sore currently, no. The rest is fun despite being tedious. Okay, that's fair. Sore for any particular reason? Were you screaming at a game or something? Or it's just one of those days? She appeared obstinately to adhere to this resolution, until Emily politely yet positively declared that were such the intention of her new friend, she would also join her in the saloon and pass the time in conversation until the day should break, or until Madame's servants should arrive. This proposition, or rather determination, was received by the frowning Isabella with an air of visible chagrin and disappointment, not altogether polite. She expressed her unwillingness that Mademoiselle should be inconvenienced, with some peevishness, but which, however, soon gave place to her former air of good breeding. Interesting. You think it was acid reflux when you were sleeping a few days ago. Okay, sad. Well, I hope you feel better. But it is. It's uploading now, so you're all good. You're all done with it. And you're just chilling. I hope. She now appeared anxious to hurry to her room, and the rest of the party having some time retired, she was escorted thither by the ever-attentive Emily. No sooner had they reached the chamber than Isabella sunk into a chair, and after struggling for some time in evident emotion for utterance, at length exclaimed, "Why, dearest Emily, would you insist on sharing with me the horrors of this night? To me the punishment is a merited one, but to you—" "What, my dearest madam, do you say?" replied Emily affectionately. "The terrors of the night are over, the thunder appears retiring, and the lightning is less vivid. And see in the west," added she as she went to the window, "there are still some remains of the summer twilight." Just filling out the upload stuff and getting the release schedule. Oh, okay, excellent. Sounds good. So you do all of the upload stuff? I'm trying to think, because yeah, I kind of skip all of that stuff. It does. Seems a little tedious, but like once you actually get through it, you do 100% of the things. Okay, sounds good. Excellent. Well, I hope it all goes well. And I hope it doesn't, I don't know, something goes wrong and it cancels it and I don't know. Huh. Knocking on wood. It's not gonna happen. It's all gonna go good. It's gonna be good. Sorry. Still some remains of the summer twilight. Do not any longer, then, suffer the apprehension of the storm which has passed over us, to disturb the repose which you will, I hope, so shortly enjoy. You're also trying to turn this into a business because you know money. That's fair. That's fair. Have you had any issues with copyright stuff yet? Because I had some issues with copyright stuff that I figured should not have been copyrighted, but, yeah. And I'm like, should I, what's the word, dispute it, or should I not? Because it's like, yeah, I don't know. No issues because you know how that stuff works. Well, sure, but okay, so the one thing is my Buster Keaton thing. It's all in the public domain, and the only one thing that's apparently copyrighted is one tiny bit of it, which doesn't make sense. The whole thing should be, rather than just the one bit. I don't know. You just avoid the problem altogether, and that's what I thought I was doing too, but apparently not. So, all right, okay. But yeah, that's the best idea, is just avoiding it. Talk you of repose, said Madame de Nunez, in a voice almost choked with agitation. Know you not, then, that on the anniversary of this horrid night— But what am I saying? To you, at present, all this is mystery. Too soon your own feelings will add conviction to the terrible experience which 6 revolving years have afforded me, and which, even now, but to think on, harrows up my soul. But no more. Oh no, okay, I guess I got it. Then, darting suddenly towards the door, which had hitherto remained ajar, she closed it with violence, and locking it, withdrew the key, which she placed in her own pocket. Okay. Emily had scarcely time to express her surprise at this action, and the apparent distraction which accompanied it, ere Madame de Nunez seized both her hands with more than female strength, and with a maddened voice and eyes straining on vacancy, exclaimed, Bear witness, ye powers of terror, that I imposed not this dreadful scene on the female whose oath must now secure her silence. Then, staring wildly at Mademoiselle de Montbrun, she continued, Why, foolish girl, wouldst thou insist on my partaking thy bed? The viper might have coiled in thy bosom, the midnight assassin might have aimed his dagger at thy breast, but the poison of the one would have been less fatal, and the apprehension of instant annihilation from the other would have been less oppressive than the harrowing scene which thou art doomed this night to witness. Doomed, I say, for all the powers of hell, whose orgies you must behold, cannot release you from the spectacle which you have voluntarily sought. Is that voluntary? To what am I doomed? Cried Emily, whose fears for herself were lessened in the dread she felt for her friend's intellects, which she supposed were suddenly become affected by illness, or from the incidents of the past day. Isabella, after a silence of several minutes, during which she endeavored to recover some degree of composure, in a softened but determined voice, said, Think not, my friend, if I may use that endearing expression, to one whose early prospects and happier days I am unwillingly condemned to blast. That disorder has produced the agitation which, spite of myself, you have witnessed. Wait, what's happening in hell? No, shh, we're not talking about that. We're gonna let it pass. Alas, great as have been my sorrow. And I mean, you know that's happening. Alas, great as have been my sorrows, and heavy as my crime weighs on me, my reason has still preserved its throne, to seek oblivion in idiocy, to bury the remembrance of my fatal error in temporary derangement, would, I might almost say, be happiness to me. But fate has forbidden such an alleviation, and my impending destiny is not to be guarded against by precaution, cannot be avoided by repentance. Nay, said Emily, exaggerated as your self-condemnation makes the fault to which you allude appear, in religion you may find a solace which could efface crimes of much deeper dye than any with which you can possibly charge yourself. Ah, no, replied the fair Spaniard. Religion, it is true, holds out her benignant hand to receive the wandering sinner. She offers to the stranger a home. She welcomes to her bosom the repentant, though blood-stained criminal. But for crimes like mine, what penitence can atone? You have several questions. I'm afraid to ask. If it's still about what was happening in hell, we're gonna leave it. Although I'm kind of curious about the questions as well. But we waste time, added she. The midnight hour approaches, and ere the clock in the turret first announces that dreaded period which must be done. And I'm sure they'll answer things, unless again, it's strictly about that. Thus saying, she went into the adjoining oratory, and finding on the little altar at which Emily offered her daily orisons an ivory crucifix, she returned with it in her hand, and again, seizing and forcibly grasping the hand of her now really alarmed hostess, she exclaimed in a hollow yet determined voice, "Swear that whatsoever you may this night, this eventful night, be a witness to, not all the apprehensions of hell, not all your hopes of heaven shall tempt you to reveal, until I am committed to the silent tomb. Swear." You're just saying that's oddly specific. Oh, usually people bring up the torments or such, but not, oh. Okay, now I'm concerned about where this story is going. We're gonna hope that that's the only mention of that. Because, okay, all right, we'll see. Because I think at that time, and potentially as a translation situation, it might only mean things that happen and not specifically that. If that makes sense. Like, occurrences. Instead of that, it's just occurrences. Like, people go to hell to atone, yeah? But, like, you don't know. I mean, oh god. It doesn't have to be... Oh, it doesn't necessarily mean it's pleasurable. So there's that answer. Emily for a moment hesitated to adopt an oath imposed under circumstances of such an extraordinary nature, but whilst she was debating, Madame de Nunez, more violently grasping her hand, exclaimed, in a voice harsh from agitation, "Swear, or dread the event." "Swear," Emily fancied she heard echoed from the oratory. Almost sinking with horror, she faintly repeated the solemn oath, which the frantic female, whose character appeared so perfectly changed, thus dictated to her. Not pleasurable. That brings up many more questions. Freudian slip. No, okay. You were talking about how usually it's torments because it's in hell, and if that's going on, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's in hell. It might be happening, but it might not be that. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we're going with this anymore, so I'm just gonna keep reading. She had no sooner thus solemnly bound herself to silence than Madame de Nunez's agitation appeared to subside. She replaced the crucifix on the altar, and sinking on her knees before the chair in which Emily, almost void of animation, was seated, she feebly exclaimed, "Pardon, dearest Emily, the madness of my conduct. Necessity has dictated it towards you, and your wayward fate, and not your suffering friend is answerable for it." But some people are into it. Maybe the character slipped their free time pat. Oh, or the author. I thought you were talking about me. Okay. Maybe it could be. Definitely could be. Well, okay. So it was in the German first, and then it was in the French. So maybe it was a lost or added in translation or adjusted in translation. So yeah. Yeah, that. Anyway, for 6 long years have I confined to my own bosom the horrors which we this night must jointly witness. On the anniversary of this day, but I dare not yet communicate the dreadful event. Some hours hence I may recover composure to relate it, but remember your oath. While I live, the secret is buried in your bosom. You must have remarked my unwillingness to remain in your dwelling. You could not have been inattentive to my repugnance to share your room. Too soon you will have a dreadful explanation of the cause. Be not angry with me. I must endeavor to conceal the circumstances which appall my soul. I must still preserve the respect of society, although I have forever forfeited my own. Hence the oath I have imposed on you. But here further conversation was interrupted by the sound of the turret clock, which began to strike the hour of midnight. It had scarcely finished ere the slow rolling of a carriage was heard in the paved courtyard, at the noise of which Madame de Nunez started from the posture in which she had continued at the feet of Emily, and rushed towards the door which she had previously locked. Emily now heard heavy footsteps ascending the oaken staircase, and before she could recall her recollection, which so singular a circumstance had bewildered, the door of the room in which they were sitting, spite of its fastening, slowly moved on its hinges, and in the next minute Emily sunk on the earth in a state of stupefaction. It is well for the human frame that when assailed by circumstances too powerful to support, it seeks shelter in oblivion. The mind recoils from the horrors which it cannot meet, and is driven into insensibility. At an early hour of the ensuing morning, Madame de Nunez quitted Monsieur de Montbrun's chateau, accompanied by her servants, whom the retiring torrents had permitted to await their At an early hour of the ensuing morning, Madame de Nunez quitted Monsieur de Montbrun's chateau, accompanied by her servants, whom the retiring torrents had permitted to await their mistress's commands. She took a hasty farewell of the master of the mansion, and without making any inquiries as to the rest of the party, departed. At the usual hour of breakfast, Emily did not appear, and her father at length went to her room door, and receiving no answer to his inquiries, went in. Spooky, spooky. Yeah, hello, by the way. How's it going? I'm hoping it doesn't go the way we were thinking it was gonna go, but yeah, we'll find out. It was certainly spooky a little bit ago, and it's probably gonna get spookier. We're gonna actually find out what happened. Judge his horror when he discovered his daughter lying on the bed in the clothes she had worn the preceding day, but in a state of apparent insensibility. Immediate medical assistance was procured, and she at length discovered symptoms of returning life. But no sooner had she recovered her recollection than, looking with horror and affright around her, she again relapsed into a state of inanimation. Repeated cordials being administered, she was again restored to life, but only to become the victim of a brain fever, which in a few days put a period to her existence. In a short interval of recollection, in the early part of her illness, she confided what we have here related to her father, but conscientiously kept from his knowledge what she was bound by her oath to conceal. The very remembrance of what she had witnessed on that fatal night hurried her into delirium, and she fell a victim to the force of recollection. Madame de Nunez did not long survive her, but expired under circumstances of unexampled horror. Gosh darn it! Oh, again, I have to keep going back to the pre thing, where it's like, well, we're not going to tell you everything, and you can't ask, and because it's horror, it's ghostly and stuff. So it's, I guess, let your imagination run wild, not too wild. Don't let it sit on anything that may have been said in the book itself. But oh gosh darn it. So, but okay, and think about this though. So apparently the Madame de Nunez was experiencing this for 6 years. No, yes? Yes, correct? Unless I read that wrong. Was she experiencing it every year on that night for 6 years, or was it like was this the only night? I feel like it was, but then why did she die after this one? Did not long survive her, but expired under circumstances. But honestly, it's so good. I don't know, it implied some wild things early. Yes, it did, but also they used that word earlier as well, and it did not mean that, okay? It just meant things happening. Not specifically those things. So, but yeah, and again, here's the thing. The fact that it doesn't actually go into it, but it does do it so well that it does let you, it implies it well enough that you can imagine all the horrors. Because a lot of times nowadays, as I'm sure you understand too, and we've talked about this, that like they do. People creative people, movies, books, whatever, they try too hard to explain how horrific it is, and in explaining it, it makes it just blah. Well, hi there, how's it going? How are you doing? We've finished one, and it didn't. Yeah. Yes, I get on your case as if you were the one that chose that verbiage. It could be a translation error. It's a very old book, and words mean different things, and context is key. Okay? Okay? We're not going to dwell on things. Oh my gosh. You might not have chosen the verbiage, but you choose to dwell on the verbiage. All right. So yeah, so I do. As much as I think the fact that it upset me so much that it was going to, that it seemed like it was going to go somewhere where it was going to relate all the events, like the story was going to go, that eventually the lady died, and so then Emily was able to impart what happened. But the fact that you never get to hear it, it gives it a little bit. It makes it hit more. You chose to dwell because it's hella weird and has many implications. But you're dwelling on the one implication. So, but, and you know, honestly, it kind of does give it that bit more of a twist. So like that twistiness. I think that it honestly might be a little bit part of it then, that using that specific word, it just kind of gives you the heebly jeeblies. You're doing well, good, okay. Sorry, Firefox crashed. Just as I asked that, okay, sounds good. I'm glad you're doing well. I do hope things are healing well. That implication underlies many others, though. Fair. But yes, but there was that one, and it was good enough that it didn't have to, and the fact that I'm upset that it didn't go into all the detail, I think kind of is a testament to like how it could have gone and stuff. So it has that lingering, yes. Ugh. You're healing well, good, no rending here. Okay, sounds good. Okay. So that one was very quick. I don't know how long this one is. But yeah, so we got one more. This is the final. This is the absolute finale of the finale. The Spectre-Barber, a tale of the 16th century. Ha. It reminds me of the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Interesting. But we'll see. So, and again, I'm not sure. This one might be one that was added into it for the English version. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, so don't take that for being true. Okay, so the Spectre-Barber, a tale of the 16th century. Sir Rience of Northgales greeteth well thee, and bids thee thy beard anon to him send, or else from thy jaws he will it off rent. Okay, there it is. Percy's Relics of Ancient English Poetry, I assume. Okay, so hide your beards, hide your wives. There formerly lived at Bremen a wealthy merchant named Melchior, who, it was remarked, invariably stroked his chin with complacency whenever the subject of the sermon was the rich man in the gospel, who, by the by, in comparison with him, was only a petty retail dealer. This said, Melchior possessed such great riches that he had caused the floor of his dining room to be paved with crown pieces. This ridiculous luxury gave great offense to Melchior's fellow citizens and relations. They attributed it to vanity and ostentation, but did not guess its true motive. However, it perfectly answered the end Melchior designed by it, for, by their constantly expressing their disapprobation of this ostentatious species of vanity, They spread abroad the report of their neighbor's immense riches, and thereby augmented his credit in a most astonishing manner. Ah, Bremen, we meeting the musicians? Is that... Oh... Do I know that reference? I feel like I do. That's not like the Four Musicians story, is it? Or am I completely off? I don't know. Melchior died... And he dies. Okay. Melchior died suddenly while at a corporation dinner, and consequently had not time to make a disposition of his property by will, so that his only son Francis, who was just of age, came into possession of the whole. I'm looking. Yeah, I thought so. Okay, I got it right. Sometimes I understand things. Oh my gosh, I love that story. It's in this book that I used to read when I was very young. It's a very good book. It's lovely. Moral tales. This, who has just come of age, came into possession of the whole. This young man was particularly favored by fortune, both with respect to his personal advantages and his goodness of heart. But this immense inheritance caused his ruin. He had no sooner got into the possession of so considerable a fortune than he squandered it, as if it had been a burden to him, ran into every possible extravagance, and neglected his concerns. 2 or 3 years passed over without his perceiving that, owing to his dissipations, his funds were considerably diminished. But at length his coffers were emptied, and one day, when Francis had drawn a draft to a very considerable amount on his banker, who had no funds to meet it, it was returned to him protested. This disappointment greatly vexed our prodigal, but only as it caused a temporary check to his wishes, for he did not even then give himself the trouble to inquire into the reason of it. After swearing and blustering for some time, he gave his steward a positive but laconic order to get money. All the brokers, bankers, money changers, and usurers were put in requisition, and the empty coffers were soon filled, for the dining room floor was in the eyes of the lenders a sufficient security. This palliative had its effect for a time, but all at once a report was spread abroad in the city that the celebrated silver floor had been taken up. The consequence of which was that the lenders insisted on examining into and proving the fact, and then became urgent for payment. But as Francis had not the means to meet their demands, they seized on all his goods and chattels. Everything was sold by auction, and he had nothing left excepting a few jewels, which had formed part of his heritage, and which might for a short time keep him from starving. He now took up his abode in a small street in one of the most remote quarters of the city, where he lived on his straitened means. He, however, accommodated himself to his situation, but the only resource he found against the ennui which overpowered him was to play on the lute, and when fatigued by this exercise, he used to stand at his window and make observations on the weather, and his intelligent mind was not long in discovering an object which soon entirely engrossed his thoughts. I almost thought it was going to go the way of the musicians for a little bit there. Guess we'll see. Opposite his window there lived a respectable woman who was at her spinning wheel from morning till night, and by her industry earned a subsistence for herself and her daughter. Meta? Such a lovely voice. Oh, thank you. Happy Thirsty Thursday. Are you enjoying your Thirsty Thursday? Happy to have you. How's it going? I'm glad my voice is not too grating. Meta. We'll go with Meta. Sounds very meta. Meta was a young girl of great beauty and attraction. She had known happier times, for her father had been the proprietor of a vessel freighted by himself, in which he annually made trading voyages to Antwerp. But he, as well as his ship and all its cargo, was lost in a violent storm. His widow supported this double loss with resignation and firmness, and resolved to support herself and her daughter by her own industry. She made over her house and furniture to the creditors of her husband, and took up her abode in the little by-street in which Francis lodged, whereby her assiduity, she acquired a subsistence without laying herself under an obligation to anyone. She brought up her daughter to spinning and other work, and lived with so much economy that by her savings she was enabled to set up a little trade in linen. Enjoying the story? Good, I'm glad. Got your blankie and all. Sounds good. It's gonna get super spoopy, I hope, I think. This one's called the Spectre-Barber. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. You're unironically working on a big gulp right now. Excellent. Very nice. I hope it's most delicious. Don't get a brain freeze. I don't know. Yeah. Hope it goes well. Mother Bridget, which was the appellation given to our widow, did not, however, calculate on terminating her existence in this penurious situation, and the hope of better prospects sustained her courage. The beauty and excellent qualities of her daughter, whom she brought up with every possible care and attention, led her to think that some advantageous offer would one day present itself. Meta lived tranquilly and lonely with her mother, was never seen in any of the public walks, and indeed never went out but to Mass once a day. It's 44 ounces of Coke. Nice. Well, Coke Zero. Still. Good. Good for Thirsty Thursday. Excellent. I do. I hope it is most delicious. Till the very last drop. The drink, not the... Never mind, okay. That's fair. It would be a little bit of a... Okay, I'm not even gonna go there. Okay, sorry. Anyway, never mind. I was gonna make a play on Thirsty Thursday versus, like, a Saturday or something, but anyway. Okay, Mass once a day. One day, while Francis was making his meteorological observations at the window, he saw the beautiful Meta, who, under her mother's watchful eye, was returning from church. The heart of Francis was as yet quite free, for the boisterous pleasures of his past life did not leave him leisure for a true affection. But at this time, when all his senses were calm, the appearance of one of the most enchanting female forms he had ever seen ravished him, and he henceforth thought solely of the adorable object which his eyes had thus discovered. He questioned his landlord respecting the two females who lived in the opposite house, and from him learned the particulars we have just related. Oh no, yes. Remember drugs, stay in, kids, don't do school. Exactly. Go there. Well, instead of Thirsty Thursday, it'd be like a snorty Sunday. My bad. Anyway, he now regretted his want of economy, since his present miserable state prevented him from making an offer to the charming Meta. He was, however, constantly at the window, in hopes of seeing her, and in that consisted his greatest delight. The mother very soon discovered the frequent appearance of her new neighbor at his window, and attributed it to its right cause. In consequence, she rigorously enjoined her daughter not to shew herself at the windows, which were now kept constantly shut. I'm glad it was amusing enough for you. Francis was not much versed in the arts of finesse, but love awakened all the energies of his soul. He soon discovered that if he appeared much at the window, his views would be suspected, and he resolved therefore studiously to refrain from coming near it. He determined, however, to continue his observation of what occurred in the opposite dwelling without being perceived. He accordingly purchased a large mirror and fixed it in his chamber in such a position that it distinctly presented to his view what passed in the abode of his opposite neighbor. Francis not being seen at the window, the old lady relaxed in her rigor, and Meta's windows were once more opened. Love, more than ever, reigned triumphant in the bosom of Francis, but how was he to make known his attachment to its object? He could neither speak nor write to her. Love, however, soon suggested a mode of communication which succeeded. Our prodigal took his lute and drew from it tones the best adapted to express the subject of his passion, and by perseverance, in less than a month, he made a wonderful progress. He soon had the gratification of seeing the fair hand of Meta open the little casement when he began to tune the instrument. When she made her appearance, he testified his joy by an air lively and gay, but if she did not shew herself, the melancholy softness of his tones discovered the disappointment he experienced. In the course of a short time, he created a great interest in the bosom of his fair neighbor, and various modes which love suggested shortly convinced our prodigal that Meta shared a mutual attachment. She now endeavored to justify him when her mother with acrimony spoke of his prodigality and past misconduct by attributing his ruin to the effect of bad example. But in so doing, she cautiously avoided exciting the suspicions of the old lady, and seemed less anxious to excuse him than to take a part in the conversation which was going on. Circumstances which our limits will not allow us to narrate rendered the situation of Francis more and more difficult to be supported. His funds had now nearly failed him, and an offer of marriage from a wealthy brewer who was called in the neighborhood the King of Hops, and which Meta, much to her mother's disappointment, refused, excited still more the apprehensions of poor Francis, lest some more fortunate suitor might yet be received, and blast his hopes forever. It's a fair for a thirsty Thursday story. When he received the information that this opulent lover had been rejected for his sake, with what bitterness did he lament his past follies. Generous girl, said he, you sacrifice yourself for a miserable creature who has nothing but a heart fondly attached to you, and which is riven with despair that its possessor cannot offer you the happiness you so truly merit. The King of Hops soon found another female, who listened more kindly to his vows, and whom he wedded with great splendor. Love, however, did not leave his work incomplete, for its influence created in the mind of Francis a desire of exerting his faculties and actively employing himself, in order, if possible, to emerge from the state of nothingness into which he was at present plunged, and it inspired him also with courage to prosecute his good intentions. Among various projects which he formed, the most rational appeared that of overlooking his father's books, taking an account of the claimable debts, and from that source to get all he possibly could. The produce of this procedure would, he thought, furnish him with the means of beginning in some small way of business, and his imagination led him to extend this to the most remote corners of the earth. In order to equip himself for the prosecution of his plans, he sold all the remainder of his father's effects, and with the money purchased a horse to commence his travels. Whoops. Come back. The idea of a separation from Meta was almost more than he could endure. What will she think, said he, of this sudden disappearance, when she no longer meets me in her way to church? Will she not think me perfidious, and banish me from her heart? Such ideas as these caused him infinite pain, and for a long while he could not devise any means of acquainting Meta with his plans. But at length the fertile genius of love furnished him with the following idea. Francis went to the curate of the church which his mistress daily frequented, and requested him before the sermon and during Mass to put up prayers for a happy issue to the affairs of a young traveler, and these prayers were to be continued till the moment of his return, when they were to be changed into those of thanks. Everything being arranged for his departure, he mounted his steed and passed close under Meta's window. He saluted her with a very significant air, and with much less caution than heretofore. The young girl blushed deeply, and Mother Bridget took this opportunity of loudly expressing her dislike to this bold adventurer, whose impertinence and foppery induced him to form designs on her daughter. From this period, the eyes of Meta in vain searched for Francis. She constantly heard the prayer which was put up for him, but was so entirely absorbed by grief at no longer perceiving the object of her affection that she paid no attention to the words of the priest. In no way could she account for his disappearing. Some months afterwards, her grief being somewhat ameliorated and her mind more tranquilized, when she was one day thinking of the last time she had seen Francis, the prayer arrested her attention. She reflected for an instant and quickly divined for whom it was said. She naturally joined in it with great fervor and strongly recommended the young traveler to the protection of her guardian angel. Meanwhile, Francis continued his journey and had traveled the whole of a very sultry day over one of the desert cantons of Westphalia without meeting with a single house. As night approached, a violent storm came on, the rain fell in torrents, and poor Francis was soaked to the very skin. In this miserable situation, he anxiously looked around, and fortunately discovered in the distance a light, towards which he directed his horse's steps. But as he drew near, he beheld a miserable cottage, which did not promise him much succor, for it more resembled a stable than the habitation of a human being. The unfeeling wretch who inhabited it refused him fire or water as if he had been a banished man. He was just about to extend himself on the straw in the midst of the cattle, and his indolence prevented his lighting a fire for the stranger. Francis vainly endeavored to move the peasant to pity. The latter was inexorable, and blew out his candle with the greatest nonchalance possible, without bestowing a thought on Francis. However, as the traveler hindered him from sleeping by his incessant lamentations and prayers, he was anxious to get rid of him. "Friend," said he to him, "if you wish to be accommodated, I promise you it will not be here, but ride through the little wood to your left hand, and you will find the castle belonging to the Chevalier Eberhard Bronkhurst, who is very hospitable to travelers, but he has a singular mania, which is to flagellate all whom he entertains. Therefore, decide accordingly." Francis, after considering for some minutes what he had best do, resolved on hazarding the adventure. "In good faith," said he, "there is no great difference between having one's back broken by the miserable accommodation of a peasant or by the Chevalier Bronkhurst. Friction disperses fever. Friction disperses fever. Possibly its effects may prove beneficial to me, if I am compelled to keep on my wet garments." Accordingly, he put spurs to his horse, and very shortly found himself before a Gothic castle, at the iron gate of which he loudly knocked, and was answered from within by, "Who's there?" Oops. Ah! But, come on, sorry, I'm ready to get to the spookins. But ere he was allowed time to reply, the gate was opened. However, in the first court he was compelled to wait with patience till they could learn whether it was the lord of the castle's pleasure to flagellate a traveler. I hope I'm saying that right, or send him out to pass the night under the canopy of heaven. This lord of the castle had from his earliest infancy served in the imperial army under command of George of Frundsberg, and had himself led a company of infantry against the Venetians. At length, however, fatigued with warfare, he had retired to his own territory, where, in order to expiate the crimes he had committed during the several campaigns he had been in, he did all the good and charitable acts in his power. But his manner still preserved all the roughness of his former profession. The newly arrived guest, although disposed to submit to the usages of the house for the sake of the good fare, could not help feeling a certain trembling of fear as he heard the bolts grating ere the doors were opened to him. And the very doors, by their groaning noise, seemed to presage the catastrophe which awaited him. A cold perspiration came over him as he passed the last door, but finding that he received the utmost attention, his fears a little abated. The servants assisted him in getting off his horse, and unfastened his cloak bag. Some of them led his horse to the stable, while others, preceding him with flambeaux, conducted Francis to their master, who awaited his arrival in a room magnificently lighted up. Poor Francis was seized with an universal tremor when he beheld the martial air and athletic form of the lord of the castle, who came up to him and shook him by the hand with so much force that he could scarcely refrain from crying out, and in a thundering voice enough to stun him, told him he was welcome. Francis shook like an aspen leaf in every part of his body. "What ails you, my young comrade?" cried the Chevalier Bronkhurst in his voice of thunder. "What makes you thus tremble, and renders you as pale as if death had actually seized you by the throat?" Francis recovered himself, and knowing that his shoulders would pay the reckoning, his fears gave place to a species of audacity. "My lord," answered he with confidence, "you see that I am so soaked with rain that one might suppose I had swam through the Weser. Order me therefore some dry clothes instead of those I have on, and let us then drink a cup of hot wine, that I may, if possible, prevent the fever which otherwise may probably seize me. It will comfort my heart." "Admirable," replied the Chevalier. "Ask for whatever you want, and consider yourself here as at home." Accordingly, Francis gave his orders like a baron of high degree. He sent away the wet clothes, made choice of others, and, in fine, made himself quite at his ease. The Chevalier, so far from expressing any dissatisfaction at his free and easy manners, commanded his people to execute whatever he ordered with promptitude, and condemned some of them as blockheads who did not appear to know how to wait on a stranger. As soon as the table was spread, the Chevalier seated himself at it with his guest. They drank a cup of hot wine together. "Do you wish for anything to eat?" demanded the lord of Francis. The latter desired he would order up what his house afforded, that he might see whether his kitchen was good. No sooner had he said this than the steward made his appearance, and soon furnished up a most delicious repast. Francis did not wait for his being requested to partake of it. But after having made a hearty meal, he said to the lord of the castle, "Your kitchen is by no means despicable, if your cellar is correspondent. I cannot but say you treat your guests nobly." The Chevalier made a sign to his butler, who brought up some inferior wine, and filled a large glass of it to his master, who drank to his guest. Francis instantly returned the compliment. "Well, young man, what say you to my wine?" asked the Chevalier. "Faith," replied Francis, "I say it is bad, if it is the best you have in your cellar, but if you have none worse, I do not condemn it." "You are a connoisseur," answered the Chevalier. "Butler, bring us a flask of older wine." His orders being instantly attended to, Francis tasted it. "This is indeed some good old wine, and we will stick to it, if you please." All right. He was check-in. He was just check-in. The servants brought in a great pitcher of it, and the Chevalier, being in high good humor, drank freely with his guest, and then launched out into a long history of his several feats of prowess in the war against the Venetians. He became so overheated by the recital that in his enthusiasm he overturned the bottles and glasses, and flourishing his knife as if it were a sword, passed it so near the nose and ears of Francis that he dreaded he should lose them in the action. Though the night wore away, the Chevalier did not manifest any desire to sleep, for he was quite in his element whenever he got on the topic of the Venetian War. Each succeeding glass added to the heat of his imagination as he proceeded in his narration, till at length Francis began to apprehend that it was the prologue to the tragedy in which he was to play the principal part. And feeling anxious to learn whether he was to pass the night in the castle or to be turned out, he asked for a last glass of wine to enable him to sleep well. He feared that they would commence by filling him with wine, and that if he did not consent to continue drinking, a pretext would be laid hold of for driving him out of the castle with the usual chastisement. However, contrary to his expectation, the lord of the castle broke the thread of his narration and said to him, "Good friend, everything in its place. Tomorrow we will resume our discourse." "Excuse me, Sir Knight," replied Francis. "Tomorrow, before sunrise, I shall be on my road. The distance from hence to Brabant, is very considerable, and I cannot tarry here longer. Therefore, permit me to take leave of you now, that I may not disturb you in the morning." "Just as you please about that, but you will not leave the castle before I am up. We will breakfast together, and I shall accompany you to the outer gate, and take leave of you according to my usual custom." Francis needed no comment to render these words intelligible. Most willingly would he have dispensed with the Chevalier's company to the gate. But the latter did not appear at all inclined to deviate from his usual custom. He ordered his servants to assist the stranger in undressing, and to take care of him till he was in bed. Francis found his bed an excellent one, and ere he went to sleep, he owned that so handsome a reception was not dearly bought at the expense of a trifling beating. The most delightful dreams, in which Meta bore the sway, occupied him the whole night, and he would have gone on, thus dreaming, till midday, if the sonorous voice of the Chevalier and the clanking of his spurs had not disturbed him. It needed all Francis's efforts to quit this delightful bed, in which he was so comfortable, and where he knew himself to be in safety. He turned from side to side, but the Chevalier's tremendous voice was like a death-stroke to him, and at length he resolved to get up. Several servants assisted him in dressing, and the Chevalier waited for him at a small but well-served table. But Francis, knowing the moment of trial was at hand, had no great inclination to feast. The Chevalier tried to persuade him to eat, telling him it was the best thing to keep out the The Chevalier tried to persuade him to eat, telling him it was the best thing to keep out the fog and damp air of the morning. "Sir Knight," replied Francis, "my stomach is still loaded from your excellent supper of last evening, but my pockets are empty, and I should much like to fill them, in order to provide against future wants." You love hearing me read? Okay, I'm glad. I am. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit tongue-tied at certain parts. I'm a little sleepy, so I am. There's a thing, a gnat. I'm glad it's good. I'm glad it's I'm glad it's enjoyable. The Chevalier evinced his pleasure at his frankness by filling his pockets with as much as they could contain. As soon as they brought him his horse, which he discovered had been well groomed and fed, he drank the last glass of wine to say adieu, expecting that at that signal the Chevalier would take him by the collar, and make him pay his welcome. But, to his no small surprise, the Chevalier contented himself with heartily shaking him by the hand as on his arrival, and as soon as the gate was opened, Francis rode off safe and sound. In no way could our traveler account for his host permitting him thus to depart without paying the usual score. At length, he began to imagine that the peasant had simply told him the story to frighten him, and feeling a curiosity to learn whether or not it had any foundation in fact, he rode back to the castle. The chevalier had not yet quitted the gate, and was conversing with his servants on the pace of Francis's horse, who appeared to trot very roughly, and seeing the traveler return, he supposed that he had forgotten something, and by his looks seemed to accuse his servants of negligence. Very much so. Okay, I'm glad. What do you want, young man? Demanded he. Why do you, who were so much pressed for time, return? Allow me, most noble sir, replied Francis, to ask you one question, for there are reports abroad which tend to vilify you. It is said that, after having hospitably received and entertained strangers, you make them at their departure feel the weight of your arm. And although I gave credence to this rumor, I have omitted nothing which might have entitled me to this mark of your favor. But strange to say, you have permitted me to depart in peace, without even the slightest mark of your strength. You see my surprise. Therefore, do pray inform me whether there is any foundation for the report, or whether I shall chastise the impudent storyteller who related the false tale to me. Young man, replied Bronkhurst, you have heard nothing but the truth, but it needs some explanations. I open my door hospitably to every stranger, and in Christian charity I give them a place at my table. But I am a man who hates form or disguise. I say all I think, and only wish in return that my guests openly and undisguisedly ask for all they want. There are, unfortunately, however, a tribe of people who fatigue by their mean complaisance and ceremonies without end, who wear me out by their dissimulation and stun me by propositions devoid of sense, or who do not conduct themselves with decency during the repast. Gracious heavens, I lose all patience when they carry their fooleries to such excesses, and I exert my right as master of the castle by taking hold of their collars and giving them tolerably severe chastisement, ere I turn them out of my gates. But a man of your sort, my young friend, will ever be welcome under my roof, for you boldly and openly ask for what you require and say what you think, and such are the persons I admire. If in your way back you pass through this canton, promise me you will pay me another visit. Goodbye. Let me caution you never to place implicit confidence in anything you hear. Believe only that there may be a single grain of truth in the whole story. Be always frank, and you will succeed through life. Heaven's blessings attend you. It is a moral story. Francis continued his journey towards Anvers most gaily, wishing as he went that he might everywhere meet with as good a reception as at the Chevalier Bronkhorst's. Oh, thought it was Bronkhurst's. I was reading it wrong the whole time. Nothing remarkable occurred during the rest of his journey, and he entered the city full of the most sanguine hopes and expectations. In every street he fancied riches stared him in the face. It appears to me, said he, that some of my father's debtors must have succeeded in business, and that they will only require my presence to repay their debts with honor. After having rested from the fatigue of his journey, he made himself acquainted with every particular relative to the debtors, and learned that the greater part had become rich, and were doing extremely well. This intelligence reanimated his hopes. He arranged his papers, and paid a visit to each of the persons who owed him anything, but his success was by no means what he had expected. Some of the debtors pretended that they had paid everything, others that they had never heard mention of Melchior of Bremen, and the rest produced accounts precisely contradictory to those he had, and which tended to prove they were creditors instead of debtors. In fine, ere 3 days had elapsed, Francis found himself in the debtors' prison, from whence he stood no chance of being released till he had paid the uttermost farthing of his father's debts. How pitiable was this poor young man's condition! Even the horrors of the prison were augmented by the remembrance of Meta. Nay, to such a pitch of desperation was he carried, that he resolved to starve himself. Oh no! Fortunately, however, at 27 years of age, such determinations are more easily formed than practiced. That's a really good way of putting that. The intention of those who put him into confinement was not merely with a view of exacting payment of his pretended debts, but to avoid paying him his due. So, whether the prayers put up for poor Francis at Bremen were effectual, or that the pretended creditors were not disposed to maintain him during his life, I know not. But after a detention of 3 months, they liberated Francis from prison, with a particular injunction to quit the territories of Anvers within 24 hours, and never to set his foot within that city again. They gave him at the same time 5 florins to defray his expenses on the road. As one may well imagine, his horse and baggage had been sold to defray the costs incident to the proceedings. With a heart overloaded with grief, he quitted Anvers in a very different frame of mind to what he experienced at entering it. Discouraged and irresolute, he mechanically followed the road which chance directed. He paid no attention to the various travelers, or indeed to any object on the road, till hunger or thirst caused him to lift his eyes to discover a steeple or some other token announcing the habitation of human beings. In this state of mind did he continue journeying on for several days incessantly. Nevertheless, a secret instinct impelled him to take the road leading to his own country. All on a sudden, he roused as if from a profound sleep, and recollected the place in which he was. He stopped an instant to consider whether he should continue the road he was then in, or return. For, said he, what a shame to return to my native city a beggar. How could he thus return to that city in which he formerly felt equal to the richest of its inhabitants? How could he, as a beggar, present himself before Meta without causing her to blush for the choice she had made? He did not allow time for his imagination to complete this miserable picture, for he instantly turned back, as if already he had found himself before the gates of Bremen, followed by the shouts of the children. His mind was soon made up as to what he should do. He resolved to go to one of the ports of the Low Countries, there to engage himself as sailor on board a Spanish vessel, to go to the newly discovered world, and not to return to his native country till he had amassed as much wealth as he had formerly so thoughtlessly squandered. In the whole of this project, Meta was only thought of at an immeasurable distance, but Francis contented himself with connecting her in idea with his future plans, and walked, or rather strode along, as if by hurrying his pace he should sooner gain possession of her. Having thus attained the frontiers of the Low Countries, he arrived at sunset in a village situated near Rheinberg, near Rheinberg, but since entirely destroyed in the 30 Years' War. A caravan of carriers from Liege filled the inn so entirely that the landlord told Francis he could not give him a lodging, adding that at the adjoining village he would find accommodations. Possibly he was actuated to this refusal by Francis's appearance, who certainly in point of garb might well be mistaken for a vagabond. The landlord took him for a spy to a band of thieves sent probably to rob the carriers, so that poor Francis, spite of his extreme lassitude, was compelled with his wallet at his back to proceed on his road, and having at his departure muttered through his teeth some bitter maledictions against the cruel and unfeeling landlord, the latter appeared touched with compassion for the poor stranger, and from the door of the inn called after him, "Young man, a word with you. If you resolve on passing the night here, I will procure you a lodging in that castle you now see on the hill. There you will have rooms in abundance, provided you are not afraid of being alone, for it is uninhabited. See, here are the keys belonging to it." Okay. Francis joyfully accepted the landlord's proposition and thanked him for it as if it had been an act of great charity. "It is to me a matter of little moment where I pass the night, provided I am at my ease and have something to eat." But the landlord was an ill-tempered fellow, and wishing to revenge the invectives Francis had poured forth against him, he sent him to the castle in order that he might be tormented by the spirits which were said to frequent it. Yes, here we go. This castle was situated on a steep rock, and was only separated from the village by the high road and a little rivulet. Its delightful prospects caused it to be kept in good repair, and to be well furnished, as its owner made use of it as a hunting seat. But no sooner did night come on than he quitted it, in order to avoid the apparitions and ghosts which haunted it. But during the day nothing of the sort was visible, and all was tranquil. When it was quite dark, Francis, with a lantern in his hand, proceeded towards the castle. The landlord accompanied him and carried a little basket of provisions, to which he had added a bottle of wine, which he said would stand the test, as well as 2 candles and 2 wax tapers for the night. Finally, some spooks. Yes, I'm so excited. Yes, for the night. Francis, not thinking he should require so many things, and being apprehensive he should have to pay for them, asked why they were all brought. The light from my lantern, said he, will suffice me till the time of my getting into bed, and ere I shall get out of it, the sun will have risen, for I am quite worn out with fatigue. I almost have an inkling of where this is going to go, and I kind of hope it does, but we'll see. I will not endeavor to conceal from you, replied the landlord, that according to the current reports, this castle is haunted by evil spirits, but do not let that frighten you. You see, I live sufficiently near that, in case anything extraordinary should happen to you, I can hear you call, and shall be in readiness with my people to render you any assistance. At my house there is somebody stirring all night, and there is also someone constantly on the watch. I have lived on this spot for 30 years, and cannot say that I have ever seen anything to alarm me. Indeed, I believe that you may with safety attribute any noises you hear during the night in this castle to cats and weasels, with which the granaries are overrun. I have only provided you with the means of keeping up a light in case of need, for, at best, night is but a gloomy season, and in addition, these candles are consecrated, and their light will undoubtedly keep off any evil spirits, should there be such in the castle. The landlord spoke only the truth when he said he had not seen any ghosts in the castle, for he never had the courage to set his foot within its doors after dark, and though he now spoke so courageously, the rogue would not have ventured on any account to enter. After having opened the door, he gave the basket into Francis's hand, pointed out the way he was to turn, and wished him good night. While the latter, fully satisfied that the story of the ghosts must be fabulous, gaily entered. He recollected all that had been told him to the prejudice of the Chevalier Bronkhorst, but unfortunately forgot what that brave Castellan had recommended to him at parting. Dang it, okay. Conformably to the landlord's instructions, he went upstairs and came to a door, which the key in his possession soon unlocked. It opened into a long, dark gallery, where his very steps re-echoed. This gallery led to a large hall, from which issued a suite of apartments furnished in a costly manner. He surveyed them all, and made choice of one in which to pass the night, that appeared rather more lively than the rest. The windows looked to the high road, and everything that passed in front of the inn could be distinctly heard from them. He lighted 2 candles, spread the cloth, ate very heartily, and felt completely at his ease so long as he was thus employed. For while eating, no thought or apprehension of spirits molested him, but he no sooner arose from table than he began to feel a sensation strongly resembling fear. In order to render himself secure, he locked the door, drew the bolts, and looked out from each window, but nothing was to be seen. He draws the bolts to keep the ghosts inside. Everything along the high road and in front of the inn was tranquil, where, contrary to the landlord's assertions, not a single light was discernible. The sound of the horn belonging to the night guard was the only thing that interrupted the silence which universally prevailed. Francis closed the windows, once again looked around the room, and after snuffing the candles that they might burn the better, he threw himself on the bed, which he found good and comfortable. But although greatly fatigued, he could not get to sleep so soon as he had hoped. A slight palpitation of the heart, which he attributed to the agitation produced by the heat of his journey, kept him awake for a considerable time, till at length sleep came to his aid. After having, as he imagined, been asleep somewhat about an hour, he awoke and started up in a state of horror possibly not unusual to a person whose blood is overheated. This idea in some degree allayed his apprehensions, and he listened attentively, but could hear nothing excepting the clock, which struck the hour of midnight. Again he listened for an instant, and turning on his side, he was just going off to sleep again, when he fancied he heard a distant door grinding on its hinges, and then shut with a heavy noise. In an instant the idea of the ghost approaching caused him no little fear, but he speedily got the better of his alarm by fancying it was only the wind. However, he could not comfort himself long. Come on. He could not comfort himself long with this idea, for the sound approached nearer and nearer, and resembled the noise made by the clanking of chains or the rattling of a large bunch of keys. The terror which Francis experienced was beyond all description, and he put his head under the clothes. The doors continued to open with a frightful noise, and at last he heard someone trying different keys at the door of his room. One of them seemed perfectly to fit the lock, but the bolts kept the door fast. Okay, so that's what they were for. However, a violent shock like a clap of thunder caused them to give way, and in stalked a tall, thin figure with a black beard, whose appearance was indicative of chagrin and melancholy. He was habited in the antique style, and on his left shoulder wore a red cloak or mantle, while his head was covered with a high-crowned hat. 3 times with slow and measured steps he walked round the room, examined the consecrated candles, and snuffed them. He then threw off his cloak, unfolded a shaving apparatus, and took from it the razors, which he sharpened on a large leather strap hanging to his belt. No powers are adequate to describe the agonies Francis endured. He recommended himself to the Virgin Mary, and endeavored, as well as his fears would permit, to form an idea of the spectre's designs on him. Whether he purposed to cut his... to cut his throat, or only take off his beard, he was at a loss to determine. The poor traveler, however, was a little more composed when he saw the spectre take out a silver shaving pot, and in a basin of the same metal put some water, after which he made a lather, and then placed a chair. But a cold perspiration came over Francis, when the spectre, with a grave air, made signs for him to sit in that chair. He knew it was useless to resist this mandate, which was but too plainly given, and thinking it most prudent to make a virtue of necessity, and to put a good face on the matter, Francis obeyed the order, jumped nimbly out of bed, and seated himself as directed. The spirit placed the shaving bib round his neck, then taking a comb and scissors, cut off his hair and whiskers, after which he lathered, according to rule, his beard, his eyebrows and head, and shaved them all off completely from his chin to the nape of his neck. This operation ended, he washed his head, wiped and dried it very nicely, made him a low bow, folded up his case, put his cloak on his shoulder, and made towards the door to go away. The consecrated candles had burnt most brilliantly during the whole of this operation, and by their clear light, Francis discovered, on looking into the glass, that he had not a single hair remaining on his head. Most bitterly did he deplore the loss of his beautiful brown hair, but he regained courage on remarking that, however great the sacrifice, all was now over, and that the spirit had no more power over him. In effect, the ghost walked towards the door with as grave an air as he had entered, but after going a few steps, he stopped, looked at Francis with a mournful air, and stroked his beard. He 3 times repeated this action, and was on the point of quitting the room, when Francis began to fancy he wanted something. With great quickness of thought, he imagined it might be that he wished him to perform a like service for him to that which he had just been executing on himself. As the spectre, spite of his woebegone aspect, appeared more inclined to raillery than gravity, and as his proceedings towards Francis appeared more a species of frolic than absolute ill-treatment, the latter no longer appeared to entertain any apprehension of him, and in consequence determined to hazard the adventure. He therefore beckoned the phantom to seat himself in the chair. It instantly returned, and obeyed. Taking off its cloak and unfolding the case, it placed it on the table and seated itself in the chair, in the attitude of one about to be shaved. Francis imitated precisely all he had seen it do. He cut off its hair and whiskers, and then lathered its head. The spirit did not move an inch. Our barber's apprentice did not handle the razor very dexterously, so that having taken hold of the ghost's beard against the grain, the latter made a horrible grimace. Francis did not feel much assured by this action. However, he got through the job as well as he could, and rendered the ghost's head as completely bald as his own. Okay. Hitherto, the scene between the two performers had passed in profound silence, but on a sudden the silence was interrupted by the ghost exclaiming with a smiling countenance, "Stranger, I heartily thank you for the eminent service you have rendered me, for to you am I indebted for deliverance from my long captivity. During the space of 300 years, I have been immersed within these walls, and my soul has been condemned to submit to this chastisement as a punishment for my crimes, until some living being had the courage to exercise retaliation on me by doing to me what I have done by others during my life." Okay. Count Hartmann formerly resided in this castle. He was a man who recognized no law nor superior, was of an arrogant and overbearing disposition, committed every species of wickedness, and violated the most sacred rights of hospitality. He played all sorts of malicious tricks to strangers who sought refuge under his roof, and to the poor who solicited his charity. I was his barber, and did everything to please him. No sooner did I perceive a pious pilgrim than in an endearing tone I urged him to come into the castle and prepared a bath for him. And while he was enjoying the idea of being taken care of, I shaved his beard and head quite close, and then turned him out of the by door with raillery and ridicule. All this was seen by Count Hartmann from his window with a sort of devilish pleasure, while the children would assemble round the abused stranger and pursue him with cries of derision. One day there came a holy man from a far distant country who wore a penitentiary cross at his back, and his devotion had imprinted scars on his feet, hands, and sides. His head was shaved, excepting a circle of hair left to resemble the crown of thorns worn by our Savior. He asked some water to wash his feet as he passed by, and some bread to eat. I instantly put him into the bath, but did not respect even his venerable head. Upon which the pilgrim pronounced this terrible curse on me. "Depraved wretch," said he, "know that at your death the formidable gates of heaven, of hell, and of purgatory will alike be closed against your sinful soul, which shall wander through this castle in the form of a ghost, until some man, without being invited or constrained, shall do to you what you have so long done to others." From that moment, the marrow in my bones dried up, and I became a perfect shadow. My soul quitted my emaciated body, and remained wandering within these walls, according to the prediction of the holy man. In vain did I look and hope for release from the painful ties which held me to earth. For know that no sooner is the soul separated from the body than it aspires to the blissful regions of peace, and the ardor of its wishes causes years to appear as long as centuries, while it languishes in a strange element, as a punishment. As a punishment, I am compelled to continue the trade that I had exercised during my life. But alas, my nocturnal appearance soon rendered this castle deserted. Now and then a poor pilgrim entered to pass the night here. When they did, however, I treated them all as I have done you, but not one has understood me, or rendered me the only service which could deliver my soul from this sad servitude. Henceforth no spirit will haunt this castle, for I shall now enjoy that repose of which I have been so long in search. Once again let me thank you, gallant youth, and believe that had I power over the hidden treasures of the globe, I would give them all to you. But, unfortunately, during my life, riches did not fall to my lot, and this castle contains no store. However, listen to the advice I am now about to give you. Remain here till your hair has grown again, then return to your own country, and at that period of the year when the days and nights are of equal length, go on the bridge which crosses the Weser, and there remain till a friend, whom you will there meet, shall tell you what you ought to do to get possession of terrestrial wealth. I wonder who that will be. When you are rolling in riches and prosperity, remember me, and on every anniversary of the day on which you released me from the heavy maledictions which overwhelmed me, cause a mass to be said for the repose of my soul. Adieu, I must now leave you. Thus saying, the phantom vanished, and left his liberator perfectly astonished at the strange history he had just related. For a considerable time Francis remained immovable, and reasoned with himself as to the reality of what he had seen, for he could not help fancying still that it was only a dream. But his closely shaved head soon convinced him that the event had actually taken place. He got into bed again and slept soundly till midday. The malicious innkeeper had been on the watch from dawn of day for the appearance of the traveler, in order that he might enjoy a laugh at his expense and express his surprise at the night's adventure. But after waiting till his patience was nearly exhausted, and finding it approached to noon, he began to apprehend that the spirit had either strangled the stranger or that he had died of fright. Surprise, surprise. He therefore called his servants together and ran with them to the castle, passing through every room till he reached the one in which he had observed the light the overnight. There he found a strange key in the door, which was still bolted. For Francis had drawn the bolts again after the ghost had vanished. The landlord, who was all anxiety, knocked loudly, and Francis, on awaking, at first thought it was the phantom come to pay him a second visit, but at length recognizing the landlord's voice, he got up and opened the door. The landlord, affecting the utmost possible astonishment, clasped his hands together and exclaimed, "Great God and all the saints! Then the red cloak has actually been here and shaved you completely. I now see that the story was but too well founded, but pray relate to me all the particulars. Tell me what the spirit was like, how he came thus to shave you, and what he said to you." Francis, having sense enough to discover his roguery, answered him by saying, "The spirit resembled a man wearing a red cloak. You know full well how he performed the operation, and his conversation I perfectly remember. Listen attentively. 'Stranger,' said he to me, 'do not trust to a certain innkeeper who has a figure of malice for his sign. The rogue knew well what would happen to you. Adieu, I now quit this abode, as my time is come, and in future no spirit will make its appearance here. I am now about to be transformed into a nightmare, and shall constantly torment and haunt this said innkeeper, unless he does penance for his villainy, by lodging, feeding, and furnishing you with everything needful, till your hair shall grow again and fall in ringlets over your shoulders.'" Oh, good. At these words, the landlord was seized with a violent trembling. He crossed himself and vowed to the Virgin Mary that he would take care of the young stranger, lodge him, and give him everything he required free of cost. He then conducted him to his house and faithfully fulfilled what he promised. The spirit being no longer heard or seen, Francis was naturally looked on as a conjurer. He several times passed a night in the castle, and one evening a courageous villager accompanied him and returned without having lost his hair. The lord of the castle, hearing that the formidable red cloak was no longer to be seen, was quite delighted, and gave orders that the stranger who had delivered him from this spirit should be well taken care of. Early in the month of September, Francis's hair began to form into ringlets, and he prepared to depart, for all his thoughts were directed towards the bridge over the Weser, where he hoped, according to the barber's predictions, to find the friend who would point out to him the way to make his fortune. When Francis took leave of the landlord, the latter presented him with a handsome horse, well appointed, and loaded with a large cloak bag on the back of the saddle, and gave him at the same time a sufficient sum of money to complete his journey. This was a present from the lord of the castle, expressive of his thanks for having delivered him from the spirit and rendered his castle again habitable. Francis arrived at his native place in high spirits. He returned to his lodging in the little street, where he lived very retired, contenting himself for the present with secret information respecting Meta. All the tidings he thus gained were of a satisfactory nature, but he would neither visit her nor make her acquainted with his return till his fate was decided. He waited with the utmost impatience for the equinox, till which time seemed immeasurably long. The night preceding the eventful day, he could not close his eyes to sleep, and that he might be sure of not missing the friend with whom as yet he was unacquainted, he took his station ere sunrise on the bridge, where no human being but himself was to be discovered. Replete with hopes of future good fortune, he formed 1,000 projects in what way to spend his money. Already had he, during the space of nearly an hour, traversed the bridge alone, giving full scope to his imagination, when on a sudden the bridge presented a moving scene, and amongst others, many beggars took their several stations on it to levy contributions on the passengers. The first of this tribe who asked charity of Francis was a poor devil with a wooden leg, who, being a pretty good physiognomist, judged from the gay and contented air of the young man that his request would be crowned with success, and his conjecture was not erroneous, for he threw a demi-florin into his hat. Francis, meanwhile, feeling persuaded that the friend he expected must belong to the highest class of society, was not surprised at not seeing him at so early an hour, and waited therefore with patience. But as the hour for visiting the exchange and the courts of justice drew near, his eyes were in constant motion. He discovered at an immense distance every well-dressed person who came on the bridge, and his blood was in a perfect ferment as each approached him, for in some one of them did he hope to discover the author of his good fortune. But it was in vain his looking the people in the face. No one paid attention to him. The beggars, who at noon were seated on the ground eating their dinner, remarking that the young man they had seen from the first of the morning was the only person remaining with them on the bridge, and that he had not spoken to anyone, or appeared to have any employment, took him for a lazy vagabond, and although they had received marks of his beneficence, they began to make game of him, and in derision called him the provost of the bridge. The physiognomist with the wooden leg remarked that his air was no longer so gay as in the morning, and that having drawn his hat over his face, he appeared entirely lost in thought, for he walked slowly along, nibbling an apple with an abstracted air. The observer, resolving to benefit by what he had remarked, went to the further extremity of the bridge, and after well examining the visionary, came up to him as a stranger, asked his charity, and succeeded to his utmost wish. For Francis, without turning round his head, gave him another demi-florin. In the afternoon, a crowd of new faces presented themselves to Francis's observation. While he became quite weary at his friend's tardiness, but hope still kept up his attention. However, the fast declining sun gave notice of the approach of night, and yet scarcely any of the many passers-by had noticed Francis. Some few, perhaps, had returned his salutation, but not one had, as he expected and hoped, embraced him. At length the day so visibly declined that the bridge became nearly deserted, for even the beggars went away. A profound melancholy seized the heart of poor Francis when he found his hopes thus deceived, and giving way to despair, he would have precipitated himself into the Weser had not the recollection of Meta deterred him. He felt anxious, ere he terminated his days in so tragical a manner, to see her once again as she went to Mass, and feast on the contemplation of her features. He was preparing to quit the bridge, when the beggar with the wooden leg accosted him, for he had in vain puzzled his brains to discover what could possibly have caused the young man to remain on the bridge from morning till night. The poor cripple had waited longer than usual on account of Francis, in order to see when he went, but as he remained longer than he wished, curiosity at length induced him openly to address him, in order to learn what he so ardently desired to know. Come here. Pray excuse me, worthy sir, said he, and permit me to ask you a question. Francis, who was by no means in a mood to talk, and who now heard from the mouth of the beggar the words which he had so anxiously expected from a friend, answered him in rather an angry tone. Well then, what is it you want to know, old man? Sir, you and I were the two first persons on this bridge today, and here we are, still the only remaining two. As for me and my companions, it is pretty clear that we only come to ask alms, but it is equally evident you do not belong to our profession, and yet you have not quitted the bridge the whole day. My dear sir, for the love of God, if it is no secret, tell me, I entreat you, for what purpose you came, and what is the grief that rends your heart? What can it concern you, old dotard, to know where the shoe pinches me, or what afflictions I am laboring under? My good sir, I wish you well. You have twice bestowed your charity on me, which I hope the Almighty will return to you with interest. I could not but observe, however, that this evening your countenance no longer looked gay and happy, as in the morning, and believe me, I was sorry to see the change. Oh. The unaffected interest evinced by the old man pleased Francis. Well, replied he, since you attach so much importance to the knowledge of the reason I have for remaining the whole day here plaguing myself, I will inform you that I came in search of a friend, who appointed to meet me on this bridge, but whom I have expected in vain. With your permission, I should say your friend is a rogue to play the fool with you in this manner. If he had so served me, I should make him feel the weight of my crutch whenever I met him. For if he has been prevented from keeping his word by any unforeseen obstacle, he ought at least to have sent to you, and not have kept you here on your feet a whole day. And yet I have no reason to complain of his not coming, for he promised me nothing. In fact, it was only in a dream that I was told I should meet a friend here. Francis spoke of it as a dream, because the history of the ghost was too long to relate. That alters the case, replied the old man. Since you rest your hopes on dreams, I am not astonished at your being deceived. I have also had many dreams in my life, but I was never fool enough to pay attention to them. If I had all the treasures that have been promised me in dreams, I could purchase the whole city of Bremen. But I have never put faith in dreams, and have not taken a single step to prove whether they were true or false, for I know full well it would be useless trouble, and I am astonished that you should have lost so fine a day, which you might have employed so much more usefully, merely on the strength of a dream, which appears to me so wholly devoid of sense or meaning. The event proves the justness of your remark, old father, and that dreams generally are deceitful. But it is rather more than 3 months since I had a very circumstantial dream relative to my meeting a friend on this particular day, here on this bridge, and it was so clearly indicated that he should communicate things of the utmost importance that I thought it worth while to ascertain whether this dream had any foundation in truth. Ah, sir, no one has had clearer dreams than myself, and one of them I shall never forget. I dreamt, several years since, that my good angel stood at the foot of my bed, in the form of a young man, and addressed me as follows: Berthold, listen attentively to my words, and do not lose any part of what I am about to say. A treasure is allotted you. Go and secure it, that you may be enabled to live happily the rest of your days. Tomorrow evening, when the sun is setting, take a pickaxe and spade over your shoulder, and go out of the city by the gate leading to Hamburg. When you arrive facing the convent of St. Nicholas, you will see a garden, the entrance to which is ornamented by 2 pillars. Conceal yourself behind one of these until the moon rises, then push the door hard, and it will yield to your efforts. Go without fear into the garden. Follow a walk covered by a triage of vines, and to the left you will see a great apple tree. Place yourself at the foot of this tree, with your face turned towards the moon, and you will perceive, at 15 feet distance, 2 bushy rose trees. Search between these 2 shrubs, and at the depth of about 6 feet you will discover a great flagstone, which covers the treasure enclosed within an iron chest. And although it is heavy and difficult to handle, do not regret the labor it will occasion you to move it from the hole where it now is. You will be well rewarded for your pains and trouble if you look for the key which is hid under the box. Oh my gosh, this reminds me of a book. I don't know if it's a spoiler for that book. I haven't read it in a while, but yeah. Oh, okay. Francis remained like one stupefied at this recital, and certainly would have been unable to conceal his astonishment if the darkness of the night had not favored him. The various particulars pointed out by the beggar brought to his recollection a little garden which he had inherited from his father, and which garden was the favorite spot of that good man. But possibly for that very reason, it was not held in estimation by the son. Melchior had caused it to be laid out according to his own taste, and his son, in the height of his extravagance, had sold it at a very low price. The beggar with his wooden leg was now become a very interesting personage to Francis, who perceived that he was the friend alluded to by the ghost in the castle of Rummelsburg. The first impulse of joy would have led him to embrace the mendicant, but he restrained his feelings, thinking it best not to communicate the result of his intelligence to him. "Well, my good man," said he, what did you when you awoke? Did you not attend to the advice given by your good angel?" "Why should I undertake a hopeless labor? It was only a vague dream, and if my good angel was anxious to appear to me, he might choose a night when I am not sleeping, which occurs but too frequently. But he has not troubled his head much about me, for if he had, I should not have been reduced, as I now am, to his shame, to beg my bread." Francis took from his pocket another piece of money and gave it to the old man, saying, "Take this to procure half a pint of wine, and drink it ere you retire to rest. Your conversation has dispelled my sorrowful thoughts. Do not fail to come regularly to this bridge, where I hope we shall meet again." The old lame man, not having for a long while made so good a day's work, overwhelmed Francis with his grateful benedictions. They separated, and each went their way. Francis, whose joy was at its height from the near prospect of his hopes being realized, very speedily reached his lodging in the by-street. The following day he ran to the purchaser of the little garden and proposed to repurchase it. The latter, to whom this property was of no particular value, and indeed who began to be tired of it, willingly consented to part with it. They very soon agreed as to the conditions of the purchase, and went immediately to sign the contract. With the money he had found in his bag, as a gift from the Lord of Rimmelsburg, Francis paid down half the price. He then procured the necessary tools for digging a hole in the earth, conveyed them to the garden, waited till the moon was up, strictly adhered to the instructions given him by the old beggar, set to work, and without any unlucky adventure, he obtained the hidden treasure. His father, as a precaution against necessity, had buried this money, without any intention to deprive his son of this considerable portion of his inheritance, but dying suddenly, he had carried the secret to his grave, and nothing but a happy combination of circumstances could have restored this lost treasure to its rightful owner. The chest, filled with gold pieces, was too heavy for Francis to remove to his lodging without employing some person to assist him, and feeling unwilling to become a topic of general conversation, he preferred concealing it in the summer house belonging to the garden and fetching it at several times. On the third day, the whole was safely conveyed to his lodging in the little back street. Francis dressed himself in the best possible style and went to the church to request that the priest would substitute for the prayers which had been previously offered up a thanksgiving for the safe return of a traveler to his native country after having happily terminated his business. He concealed himself in a corner where, unseen, he could observe Meta. The sight of her gave him inexpressible delight, especially when he saw the beautiful blush which overspread her cheeks and the brilliancy of her eyes when the priest offered up the thanksgiving. A secret meeting took place as had been formerly arranged, and so much was Meta affected by it that any indifferent person might have divined the cause. Francis repaired to the exchange, set up again in business, and in a very short time had enough to do. His fortune each succeeding day becoming better known, his neighbors judged that he had had greater luck than sense in his journey to collect his father's debts. He hired a large house in the best part of the town, engaged clerks, and continued his business with laudable and indefatigable assiduity. He conducted himself with the utmost propriety and sagacity, and abstained from the foolish extravagancies which had formerly been his ruin. The re-establishment of Francis's fortune formed the general topic of conversation. Everyone was astonished at the success of his foreign voyage, but in proportion to the spreading fame of his riches, did Meta's tranquility and happiness diminish, for it appeared that her silent lover was now in a condition to declare himself openly, and yet he remained dumb, and only manifested his love by the usual rencontre, on coming out of church, and even this species of rendezvous became less frequent, which appeared to evince a diminution of his affection. I'm so sorry, it's getting very late. Poor Meta's heart was now torn by jealousy, for she imagined that the inconstant Francis was offering up his vows to some other beauty. She had experienced secret transports of delight on learning the change of fortune of the man she loved, not from interested motives and the wish to participate in his bettered fortune herself, but from affection to her mother, who, since the failure of the match with the rich brewer, absolutely seemed to despair of ever enjoying happiness or comfort in this world. When she thought Francis faithless, she wished that the prayers put up for him in the church had not been heard, and that his journey had not been attended with such entire success. For had he been reduced to means merely sufficient to procure the necessaries of life, in all probability he would have shared them with her. Mother Bridget failed not to perceive her daughter's uneasiness, and easily guessed the cause, for she had heard of her old neighbor's surprising return, and she knew he was now considered an industrious, intelligent merchant. Therefore she thought if his love for her daughter was what it ought to be, he would not be thus tardy in declaring it, for she well knew Meta's sentiments towards him. However, feeling anxious to avoid the probability of wounding her daughter's feelings, she avoided mentioning the subject to her. But the latter, no longer able to confine her grief to her own bosom, disclosed it to her mother, and confided the whole to her. Mother Bridget did not reproach her daughter for her past conduct, but employed all her eloquence to console her, and entreated her to bear up with courage under the loss of all her hopes. "You must resign him," said she. "You scorned at the happiness which presented itself to your acceptance. Therefore, you must now endeavor to be resigned at its departure. Experience has taught me that those hopes which appear the best founded are frequently the most delusive. Follow my example and never again deliver up your heart. Do not reckon on any amelioration of your condition, and you will be contented with your lot." My gosh. "Honor this spinning wheel, which produces the means of your subsistence, and then fortune and riches will be immaterial to you. You may do without them." Thus saying, Mother Bridget turned her wheel round with redoubled velocity in order to make up for the time lost in conversation. She spoke nothing but the truth to her daughter, for since the opportunity was gone by when she hoped it was possible to have regained her lost comforts, she had in such a manner simplified her present wants and projects of future life, that it was not in the power of destiny to produce any considerable derangement in them. But as yet Meta was not so great a philosopher, so that her mother's exhortations, consolations, and doctrines produced a precisely different effect on her from what they were intended. Meta looked on herself as the destroyer of the flattering hopes her mother had entertained, although she did not formally accept the offer of marriage proposed to her, and even then could not have reckoned on possessing beyond the common necessaries of life. Yet, since she had heard the tidings of the great fortune obtained by the man of her heart, her views had become enlarged, and she anticipated with pleasure that by her choice she might realize her mother's wishes. Now, however, this golden dream had vanished. Francis would not come again, and indeed they even began to talk in the city of an alliance about to take place between him and a very rich young lady of Anvers. This news was a death blow to poor Meta. She vowed she would banish him from her thoughts, but still moistened her work with her tears. Contrary, however, to her vow, she was one day thinking of the faithless one, for whenever she filled her spinning wheel, she thought of the following distich, which her mother had frequently repeated to her to encourage her in her work. "Spin the thread well, spin, spin it more, for see your intended is now at the door." Someone did in reality knock gently at the door, and Mother Bridget went to see who it was. Francis entered, attired as for the celebration of a wedding. Surprise for a while suspended Mother Bridget's faculties of speech. Meta, blushing deeply and trembling, arose from her seat, but was equally unable with her mother to say a word. Francis was the only one of the three who could speak, and he candidly declared his love and demanded of Bridget the hand of her daughter. The good mother, ever attentive to forms, asked 8 days to consider the matter, although the tears of joy which she shed plainly evinced her ready and prompt acquiescence. But Frances, all impatience, would not hear of delay, finding which she, conformable to her duty as a mother, and willing to satisfy Frances's ardor, adopted a midway, and left the decision to her daughter. The latter, obeying the dictates of her heart, placed herself by the side of the object of her tenderest affection, and Frances, transported with joy, thanked her by a kiss. The two lovers then entertained themselves with talking over the delights of the time when they so well communicated their sentiments by signs. Francis had great difficulty in tearing himself away from Meta in such converse sweet, but he had an important duty to fulfill. He directed his steps towards the bridge over the Weser, where he hoped to find his old friend with the wooden leg, whom he had by no means forgotten, although he had delayed making the promised visit. The latter instantly recognized Francis, and no sooner saw him at the foot of the bridge than he came to meet him and shewed evident marks of pleasure at sight of him. Can you, my friend, said Francis to him, after returning his salutation, come with me into the new town and execute a commission? You will be well rewarded for your trouble. Why not? With my wooden leg I walk about just as well as other people, and indeed have an advantage over them, for it is never fatigued. I beg you, however, my good sir, to have the kindness to wait till the man with the grey greatcoat arrives. What has this man in the grey greatcoat to do with you? He every day comes as evening approaches and gives me a demi-florin, I know not from whom. It is not indeed always proper to learn all things, so I do not breathe a word. I am sometimes tempted to believe that it is the devil who is anxious to buy my soul, but it matters little. I have not consented to the bargain, therefore it cannot be valid. I verily believe that grey surtout has some malice in his head, so follow me, and you shall have a quarter florin over and above the bargain. Francis conducted the old man to a distant corner near the ramparts of the city, stopped before a newly built house, and knocked at the door. As soon as the door was opened, he thus addressed the old beggar. You have procured a very agreeable evening for me in the course of my life. It is but just, therefore, that I should shed some comforts over your declining days. This house and everything appertaining thereto belongs to you. The kitchen and cellar are both well stocked. There is a person to take care of you, and every day at dinner you will find a quarter florin under your plate. It is now time for you to know that the man in the grey surtout is my servant, whom I every day sent with my alms till this house was ready to receive you. You may, if you please, consider me as your guardian angel, since your good angel did not acquit himself uprightly in return for your gratitude. Saying this, he made the old man go into his house, where the latter found everything he could possibly desire or want. The table was spread, and the old man was so much astonished at this unexpected good fortune that he thought it must be a dream, for he could in no way imagine why a rich man should feel so much interest for a miserable beggar. Francis, having again assured him that everything he saw was his own, a torrent of tears expressed his thanks, and before he could sufficiently recover from his astonishment to express his gratitude by words, Francis had vanished. The following day, Mother Bridget's house was filled with merchants and shopkeepers of all descriptions, whom Francis had sent to Meta, in order that she might purchase and get ready everything she required for her appearance in the world with suitable éclat. 3 weeks afterwards, he conducted her to the altar. The splendor of the wedding far exceeded that of the King of Hops. Mother Bridget enjoyed the satisfaction of adorning her daughter's forehead with the nuptial crown, and thereby obtained the accomplishment of all her desires, and was recompensed for her virtuous and active life. She witnessed her daughter's happiness with delight, and proved the very best of grandmothers to her daughter's children. The end. Well, that certainly did not go the way that I thought it was gonna go. um, yeah, so it had a spook. It had a spoop. And then it definitely went entirely a different direction. But it was kind of nice. It was kind of lovely. Um, it was a good story in general. There was a lot less spook to it than I was anticipating. Because I was trying to think. I did. I was thinking it was going to be very much just like the haunted castle sort of thing, and he's got to stay the whole night, and he's able to stay the whole night. So then fortune, yeah, sort of a fine good evening to you, lady. Thank you, thank you. A fine good evening to you as well. We just finished, literally. But yeah, so it was a less spoopy movie. Movie. Wow, again, very tired. Um, Far less spoopy. I was thinking it was going to be like he had to. It was a haunted castle, so he's got to stay the night, and because he's able to stay the night, he gets his fortune or whatever, and then all of a sudden it went elsewhere and reminded me of another book, which, again, the dream of fortune sort of situation, that whole thing was in The Alchemist, which is a really good book. I recommend that as well. And then and then it did. It had the Bremen bit, and as soon as he brought out the lute, I was like, "Is that what he's gonna do?" I didn't. I had no idea where it was going. I definitely thought it was gonna be way spookier, but it was a nice, lovely, lovely story. The first story was definitely spoopins, and yeah. But that was. We'll see if there's anything else. Nope, it's all over. It's done. So yeah, so that was The Storm and the Spectre-Barber. Typical lightweight Weybridge pablum. Um, I'm unsure. Oh, Weybridge. Okay, got you. Okay. Um, well, and I was thinking at the beginning that this might have been an added in for the English version, so this might not have even been from the original Phantasmagoriana or even the German one before that. So I'm not sure. But it was it was a happy ending, which defeated the purpose a little bit of the spoopings. Sorry, you were just that's absolutely fine. It just kind of like just the way it was a long day, and it's been a long whatever, but so I'm a little bit tired, a little less able to understand things, so I apologize. So as I read it, it just like looked like gibberish for a bit. So yeah. But that was Phantasmagoriana, Tales of the Dead, the finale. I feel a little bit again, it was a lovely story, but it didn't have the spoopins that I was looking forward to. First one was good, second one it had some of it, and then it just kind of became like moral story. So wish you hadn't missed it, but glad you at least got to say hi. And I'm glad you got to say hi as well. Well, so that's the thing. So next week, for the reading at least, we'll read the so again, overview again. This Phantasmagoriana, I guess I could put the thing up. Da 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 da. Tales of the Dead Phantasmagoriana was what was apparently, at least the French version was, I think it was the French version, was what Mary Shelley, Lord Byron, all of them were reading the during the time when they ended up doing the contest, which resulted in the vampire and Frankenstein. So the writing of those. So that was that. So next week we'll read the little poem that Lord Byron wrote, and then the vampire with a Y. We won't read Frankenstein because it'll take like 5 to 7 hours. But yeah, so that's the plan for next week. That's why we read these, and then we'll read that because that'll be the last spoopy reading. Because it's coming up. It's coming up the end of October. So, we still got stuff yet to do. We got 2 Sundays and a Tuesday. So we'll figure out. I kind of want to do the spoopy game, 5 to 7 hours endurance street. Oh no. It is on a Thursday. Oh, okay. That is a joke. See, you can't joke with me when I'm in this state because I will take it seriously. Oh, that could be interesting though. I'm gonna look at. You like reading, but good lord, please. Oh, I could read for hours and hours. It's the vocal necessity is a bit much. But see, you shouldn't. You should. You just generally shouldn't make jokes like that because you never know when I am going to actually consider them. But we'll see. I have some stuff potentially happening next week. I'll find that out Friday. So if I'm too exhausted from that, I definitely won't consider it. But Now you've put the nugget into my brain, so we'll see. Well, but that's the thing is because if we read Frankenstein for the 5 to 7 hours, we also still have to read the poem and the vampire. So it's probably not going to happen. So it's just it'll be for now. The plan is just the poem and the vampire, but we'll see how the week pans out. So yeah, so I do kind of want to potentially probably do an actual scary game on Sunday because it is Thursday. Yeah, so game is next. So Sunday, actual potential scary. So I'll have to figure out which one. And then Tuesday we'll do more flying, and we'll hopefully probably actually I'll try and do it somewhat earlier so that we can actually do like a full controlled flight. Okay, if we're shooting for the moon, how about you read a 3-hour book during a Cessna 172 IFR cruise in a hot tub stream? That would be insane. I don't have a hot tub, sorry. You'd watch that, okay. Or do a ferry flight, and once that cruise, read a book. Ooh. We talked about at some point doing like the reading during a cruise. Oh. 5 to 7 hour flight while reading Frankenstein. For legal reasons in the sim. Right. Yes, no hot tubs. I'm not that kind of stream. Not just because I don't have one. Anyway. Just reporting on associate of me. Okay, fair, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see about. I don't know. Once October's over, we'll be able to figure out some new things to do. I don't know. We'll see. I have thoughts. I have ideas, but it is getting to the like more holidays, I guess. So yeah, we'll see. We'll figure that out once it comes. So we'll see about Sunday. I'll try and figure out like an actual kind of like scary one, I think, so that like actual like October 30th more, that one might be more of just like the super Halloweeny sort of one. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure it out. You're only trying to be funny, element of surprise. That's fair. That's fair. No, it did. I understand. I understand. I thought it was hilarious. So yeah, and then yeah, so then again, so Tuesday, controlled hopefully, and then more commercial maneuvers. So I guess throw out there, well, it was. I'll quick do an overview of my day because it went. Yeah, there's always something new in flying. So I was supposed to go do my cross country with my instructor today because he started at regionals last week or the week before, and so now his schedule is kind of like off. But it worked out where he was able to go. So we were gonna go do that, and we were ready to go do some fall colors and just have a fun flight. And we get to the run up area, and the mag, it was running rough, the left mag. So we're like, okay, that's not gonna work. So we taxied it back in, and by the time the owner got it fixed, my instructor had to leave. So I went up and practiced the maneuvers, and I didn't actually do too badly. From the sim, I would have thought I would have done a lot worse, but it actually worked out pretty well. So I do. I actually have a much better grasp on the maneuvers than I think I do, at least better than I do in the sim. So it's, and I will. I'm working on figuring out the GoPro thing, or not GoPro. I don't know. I'll have to look back to see which one you recommended. So that, yeah, I could actually prove that I am I can actually do the things. So yeah, so did the lazy eights, did some Shendels, and then the power off 180s went pretty okay as well. So yeah, so that was why today was so long, because it was like we were supposed to fly at noon, and then like 4 hours later I was able to actually fly, and then that was 2 hours after that I got home. So yeah, it was a long day, but it was fun, and it was a lot. I got to help with the maintenance a little bit. I got to help like with the cowling and take the cowling off and and then the vacuum pump was completely busted. So we saw that there wasn't any vacuum pressure, but it was a VFR flight, so we were going to be fine. So he ended up taking that out too and replacing it, and yeah, it was just completely snapped. So yeah, anyway, so that was the day. That's why I'm so tired, and that's why I apologize for the tongue-tiedness and the willingness to participate in chat shenanigans. Despite my insistence that I am definitely a lady. If I want a spoopy flying stream, chat gives you departure and destination airports out of the blue, and you have 3 minutes to flight plan and get airborne. Okay. Are you meaning on VATSIM though? Cause I'm okay. Actually, okay. Departure and destination airports out of the blue. What kind of navigation am I allowed? Grab to case. Well, but now I have 3 minutes to flight plan and get airborne. So now I have time to VOR only. No, so I can't use my ForeFlight. VOR only, VOR DME. And do I have to make it I assume I have to make it like instrument departure and oh my gosh, wait, do I have to make it instrument? Because like then it is. That's so much more. Then I have to know departure procedure. I have to look at departure procedures and plan approaches and stuff. VFR only dead wreck, baby. Oh no. Oh god. Yes, Steamy included. Okay. You did that all the time, too easy. I don't do that all the time. I know I'm bad. I'm terrible. But okay, so again, so I'm on Sky Vector. I receive my my departure and destination. I pop it in, and then I have to do the thing. Then in Kansas. What you mean? So then. Oh, because VOR and stuff. There's not enough. Oh god. Oh no. Oh. We'll see. I will consider it, because that does sound scary. But again. So I assume I do. I assume I have to do it on VATSIM. Do I have to do it controlled then, though? Because Kansas is boring and flat. Right, that's fair. Okay, wait. Okay. Oh, God. See, I mean, I have done that before. But I was just thinking about this earlier. I am somebody who really likes to plan things out, and having to wing all these things has been a challenge for me. It's been good for me, but it's been a challenge. So maybe that is... So I wouldn't even be able to pre-flight. So okay, hang on. So I get in the sim. I'm just trying to figure out how this is gonna work. And I guess we can figure this out on Sunday too, but and I guess we could figure it out on Tuesday as well. But I'm just trying. Am I what's the word? Am I VAT simming again? Because then I'm gonna need a little more than 3 minutes, because I do want to do that proper. But otherwise, yeah, definitely. If you want to boot up sim, string together points, pick departure, and approach, yeet. So no Sky Vector. It's just we go in the sim, we go to the map, pick the points, and go, and then I have to figure it out once I get in the air. Is that how it is? I'm gonna get so lost. Probably planned in Skyvector on. Yeah, but I only get 3 minutes. Sounds about right. Oh god. Yeah. Oh. Oh, you are in on this. Oh gosh. But I get to use ForeFlight because I need my charts, correct? I just can't have my plane on the screen. Correct? Three minutes in Skyvector, then double click the sim or double check this. I'm confused. SpOoKy. I know it is. Oh no. Ah. And I assume it'll be at night. Wait. Double click the sim like to launch. Ooh. So I get 3 minutes in Skyvector, and then while the sim is launching, I get more time to plan. Yes? I like that idea. That's a good idea. That's a perfect idea. I think I can handle them. Handle that. No? I'm trying to find my loopholes. No, Bonk. That's what it sounded like to me. That's exactly what you said. So, okay. So 3 minutes in Skyvector. I put in the departure. I click fly. And then we go. So does that mean I have to start on the runway then? So then I wouldn't be able to do that sim then. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to bargain this a little bit. Cuz I think I still should do VATSIM. I won't do Towered. I'll just do it on the Unicom. So yeah. So I get 5 minutes of pre-flight to get like all of the frequencies and stuff in, and then I just got to go and do it. And then I don't know. I'm almost like, does there need to be like punishments for hesitation or something? Like if I'm hesitating to make my calls. Oh, I got this. Okay. You'll be with me every step of the way in spirit from afar. Sounds good. All right. What? Why did you make that face? I'm concerned. Okay. So, okay, all right. 3 minutes to plan. I have to file too? After that, you file, then you get in the sim and do the thing. Wait. Okay. Filing what? Am I doing VFR or am I doing IFR? And am I being controlled? Yeah, I file with that sim. But then I have to be controlled, and then I need a little more time for that. I open the sim, go to world, pick a flight scenery thing, pick the plane, get my departure and destination airport, start the flight, start the clock, Skyvector, plan for 3 minutes, then go fly from the runway. See, but again, you guys have to come to a consensus on that, because if I am actually filing and getting controlled, I need more time than 3 minutes. Oh, and okay, so that is then go fly from the runway, because then I wouldn't be able to do VATSIM at all because I'm not supposed to. I thought there's some things that are too spooky even for me. So I like spooky. I don't like downright terrifying. You've seen how I am in trying to do controlled stuff on VATSIM. You second this, but from the ramp. Okay. So again. Open the sim. Go to world, pick a flight. World, pick a flight screeny thing. Pick the plane. Get the departure and destination airports. Start the flight. Start the clock. So what? Oh, so I'm planning in Sky Vector for the 3 minutes that it's loading, so I don't even get that. Then go fly. But we'll do it from the ramp. I will forego most of, well, basically all of pre-flight, and we'll just turn it all on. Yeah, okay. And then I gotta do a strong negotiator should work for your competitor. I'm just trying not to, like, have a breakdown on Tuesday. Ramp is okay, but you can't delay it all. Right, okay. Okay. So, and again. Am I doing it IFR or am I doing it VFR? And am I doing it controlled or uncontrolled? That kind of... So, am I doing it IFR? Which would be controlled. And if I'm doing it VFR, I'm just doing Unicom, correct? I can't delay it all. I'm really good at delaying, though, so... Okay. And, okay, I do want... I kind of want to be, like, hard on the, not being controlled. Because I don't want to... I want to be proper when I'm actually doing that, and I'm sure I'm gonna get lost on this flight. So just being lost on Unicom will be enough spoop for me. I think that okay. I can accept all that then. Okay, so you open the sim, you go to the flight screen, pick plane, get the departure, and wait, are you guys picking the plane too? Because then there's definitely going to be delays. I think we'll keep it with the 152. We'll keep it with the 152. So then departure and destination, start it. I do my planning for the 3 minutes. Okay. And we'll Unicom it. Flight of DA62. Was that like French one that has the GPS in it and I was terrible at flying? Is it a tail wheel and I crashed the one time? I feel like that might be correct. That's definitely not going to go well. Then my other stipulation is you have to do it remote airports. No, like, Bravo stuff like that, because I have to be able to not be in anybody's way on VES. So walking down a dark hallway in a mansion past bloody walls should bring no surprises or hurrying. No, absolutely not. That's the stuff I like. No, it's a multi with a G1000. Yeah. I thought that sounds familiar. I want to say I flew that at one point to... No, it wasn't the G1000, I guess that. No, never mind. Okay. So no, I haven't got to multi stuff yet. So, oh, well that could be spooky as well. I don't know if that came through, but I'm sorry for my squeak of fear. We will. We'll iron out the details on Sunday. How about that? I'm not opposed entirely. Okay. All right. I'm not opposed. We'll figure it out on Sunday, or we'll figure it out the first part of Tuesday. Not taking a lot of time for it, but like we'll figure it out. We'll iron it out. We'll do it. Okay. Gosh darn it. You guys aren't allowed to be giving me ideas while I'm in this state. I'm too easily, what's the word? Persuaded. You're not opposed to much? Okay. Gosh darn it. So you're all in agreement. All right. Okay, fine. I can be. Ugh. You're opposed to me ending the stream? Well, I must end the stream because I'm. Oh gosh, I'm so tired. And what state? I'm so tired. It was a long, unexpected day. Good. Like I am. I'm sad that I didn't get to go up with my instructor and get my dual cross country taken care of, but I was able to practice the maneuvers in the actual plane, and I wasn't that bad. And then it was just long, long day. Very tired. Very persuadable again. Write down all the chat ideas for departure. Okay. Write down all the chat ideas for departure arrival combos. Put them in a hat. It must be a witch's hat. I'll get it. I'll do that. And pick my destiny blindly. Okay. All right. Oh! Or I have a little pumpkin, either a cauldron or a pumpkin little candy grabby thingy. I can do that. Okay, I like that. That's fun. Okay. All right. All right. Do me a livery for the 152. I have a livery for the 152. And I've actually been trying to Tiki made it for me. Tiki 406. I was trying to figure out how to stick it on the what's it called? The modded one. So yeah, I got to fly in my livery once, and then I got the mod for the 152, and now I have to figure out how to get the livery for the 152 that I have onto the mod. So I'm such a good sport. It's awesome. I like it. I like having fun. It is. I can see where the joy is from you guys' side, so I'm willing to I'm willing to play a lot, and it is fun for me as much as I might what's the word, protest a little bit. Yeah, it is. It will be fun. I'm nervous, but a lot of stuff that just the whole flying thing has been a lot of nerve-wracking things that eventually ended up being really good and fun. So I'm willing. You can walk me through it, send you the livery, recreate it, unless it would offend the viewer who made it. I don't know. So I haven't seen him in a while, so maybe I could. I'll maybe ask him first, and if he doesn't have time, then I'll let you know. How's that sound? Because I don't want to like be like, hey, thanks for making me this livery, and then can you actually make it differently now? So yeah, so I will. I'll let you know. I'll get in touch with him, and yeah, okay, no worries. We'll be happy to help. Thank you, and I really do appreciate it. Cause yeah. Okay, so must remember the either pumpkin or cauldron. I'll bring both. We'll see what happens. It is just slightly different on the mod, and that's what I thought. I thought it wouldn't be like. I feel like the whole like kind of outside is a lot the same and like whatever, but I guess I don't know all the intricacies in it, so. I'm sure there is. It's not just a copy paste sort of thing, which is what I was hoping. But so yes, so I'll bring the pumpkin and cauldron, and yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll iron things out in the preceding. Am I saying the correct word? I'm so tired. In the preceding days, we shall make sure we'll iron it out, and it'll be good. So yeah. So again, that was Fantasmagoriana. Thanks for sticking with me through it. They were actually really good. I really enjoyed doing them. And then, yeah, and again the poem, the Lord Byron poem, and the vampire on Thursday. We'll see about Frankenstein. We'll do something spooky, I think. Spooky and or horror on Sunday. And then we'll do Tuesday. The template files are different. It is not copy paste. You can steal the colors and logo and put them where they go. Steal them. You have an idea for a long book I could read? Is it War and Peace? I have to read that at some point, but I haven't started yet. I have 2 books in the queue at the moment. I mean, among others, but yeah. Does anyone write? What if we write stuff and have me read it? There's gotta be some limitations on that, I think. Monster by Frank Peretti. That sounds familiar. What is it about? I mean, I kind of like that idea too. The writing stuff and having me read it. Excellent read with a nice moral truth hidden in it. Oh, excellent. I like that. Okay. All right. I will. I'll look it up. I'll look it up. Remind me of it. You're not writing smut? Okay, good. And then you get all up in your grill. Exactly. We will. We'll. Um. Again, after October, we have to figure out what we're doing from then on. I've been uploading the YouTube stuff, or I've been uploading the all of my old VODs to YouTube, and I miss watching stuff. I got all this Buster Keaton stuff that I would watch, and that was fun and that was good. So I kind of want to do that at some point again too, among other things. But yeah, so we'll see. If you guys do, if you have certain like requests or whatever, let me know in my Discord. I assume everybody's in my Discord, but I'll throw it up there again, just in case. But yeah, throw stuff in there. But we'll see. It'll take me a bit to get through things. So this particular one about Sasquatch, or is it? Okay, he has a bunch of books. Excellent reads every time, like the kind you cannot put down. Excellent. Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, I will. I will put it on the list. Actually, sorry, I have 3 books in my immediate queue, plus all the C.S. Lewis that I have to read. So yeah, and including okay. So you know the movie Bat 21 that I need to watch at some point. There's a book, so I need to read the book first, and then I'm gonna watch the movie. So that's one of the ones in my queue. And then there's another one. It's either about or by Betty Green. Who there's a guy who lives near the airport that I fly out of, and he recommended it, and he said that it was really good. So yeah, so those are the couple in my queue. So just remind me, and I will get to it eventually. So yeah, all right. So I think I went through all the things. I will stop repeating things unless there's anything that needs clarification. My entire mind needs clarification. However, I think, yeah, I think that's it. If I forgot anything, I'm very sorry. Brain is mush as always, and even more so this evening. But yeah, we'll hope to see you again. So to whoever got lost and found their way here or found their way back, thanks for being here. Thanks for putting up with me. Hope you enjoyed it. And hope to see you again soon. So either Sunday or Tuesday or Thursday or whenever else. Have a great whatever it's going to be for you. And I think that's it. So thank you. And bye. Have a great night, you too. Thank you.